Alright everybody, this is Poker Strategy, how I make $5,000 plus per month playing cash games. I am Marcus Hain. This is section 4, which discusses playing different hands. And this is lesson number 3, which is going to discuss playing the flop. So the first thing that you want to do when playing the flop is you also want to evaluate the flop. So you want to ask yourself a few questions such as number 1, how strong is your hand? And number 2, do you have a draw? Can you make a flush or straight when a potential or following card comes out? So these are two very important questions that you want to ask yourself to be able to evaluate the flop and to really understand where you stand. The other important things that you want to evaluate for the flop, in addition to the things that I just mentioned, is you need to consider a ton of other factors to make a good decision. So you want to look at things such as the size of your stack and the size of your opponent's stacks. So if your opponent only has $10 and you've got 200, you can only win $10 no matter how well you hit your draw or how badly you miss your draw. You only lose $10. So there's different ways of looking at it. You also want to look at your position in the hand. Later position is always better, and especially when you're in a drawing hand, having later position is great because you can check when your opponent checks, and when you hit your possible hand, you can get paid out a lot if he ends up betting. Lastly, what you want to also look at is how the flop can help the other players in the hand. So you just don't want to look at it from your standpoint, but you also want to see what potential cards and what potential draws that your opponents may potentially have as well. The more thought that you do put into the flop, the easier the rest of your hand will be for playing the game. Next, you also want to consider the future of the hand. So you're not just looking at the flop alone, but you're kind of trying to predict and see into the future. Consider what you're going to do on some of the future betting rounds to decide what cards are going to come on the turns and the rivers. Do you have an idea of what you're going to do on the turn? Let's say the card does come, what's your next plan of action? Or let's say the card doesn't come, what are you going to do? And does it seem that you can make a profitable play on your turn? So if you have a good idea of potentially being able to bluff for the pot on the turn, that might be considered a profitable play. So you never really want to make a play hoping that everything's going to be okay when a turn or river comes. So you really want to have plan Bs, plan Cs, and backup plans. But it's definitely something that you can consider and keep in mind. Some tips for playing the flop. So don't get too attached to weak straights and flush draws. They aren't as strong as you think they are. You definitely need to make continuation bets as often as you can, especially if you're the one raising before the flop. Do not be afraid to bet your strong hands immediately, and do not wait for others. You have the time to make your decision, so be sure to use it to your own advantage. There is no rush when playing poker. Patience wins the race, and patience is really a virtue when it comes to poker. So just keep all these tips in mind, and you guys will be very, very strong playing flops and do very, very well. But that's it for this section. I'll catch you guys in the next one.